Hello, Santa Clarita, and welcome to another episode of the Coffee Corner Radio. Today's show will be all about food and wellness. I'm so excited we have Paul with us. Hi, Paul.
You're excited to have me here?
Absolutely, always, Paul.
Okay.
And Miss T, of course.
Hi.
And we have the famous Betty Porto from Porto's Bakery. Betty, they've been waiting for Porto's here at Santa Clarita. What do you have to say about that? But say hello to them first.
Good afternoon. Don't lose hope. It's not going to happen this year or next year, but you never know.
There you go. They're actually coming up with a coffee shop next door. So they're hoping they'll be serving some Portos.
Well, that's going to depend on you, I guess.
Okay, sounds good enough. Well, talk to us about how this whole business started. I know it's a family business. I've heard this story once before, but for the sake of our listeners, talk to me about that.
It's a long story, but it started...
We have time.
You have time?
Yeah.
It started back in Cuba. My parents, and I was born in Cuba. My parents, in the 60s, when Castro came to power, didn't want us to stay in the island. They didn't agree with the communist philosophy. And so they set out to leave the country, which wasn't easy. It was the beginning of the revolution, and the moment you decided you were going to leave the island, you became the enemy of the state. So it wasn't a comfortable place to be living in. My dad was taken to a forced labor camp, away from us, from the children and the wife. And my mother lost a very lucrative job. She ran an office, and that office was closed because it was taken over by the government. It was a family-owned operation, and so they closed it. And so she went back home, no husband. Neither one of them had a job. I think my dad went from making $180 to $8 a month.
Wow.
And my mother, like I said, she was like the office. She ran the whole office because she had an education. She was making like $280, and she went to zero. So she's home with the kids, and the neighbors are started to tell her, why don't you go back to making these cakes? You make fabulous cakes for the kids. Why don't you start making them and selling them for everybody so you can survive while you wait to get out of the country? Little did we know it was going to take us almost 8 to 10. It was closer to 9 years to get out of Cuba. So that meant that my mother did this for 9 years, which wasn't, again, it wasn't a comfortable thing to be doing because what she was doing was illegal. It was private enterprise. And so our house would be raided, but and if they would have caught her with anything, she would have been in jail for 25 years.
Wow.
We had incredible neighbors. We had neighbors that were better neighbors than they were communists. So they would tell us when they heard that the secret police was coming. So she was able to get what little equipment she had and little mixers and throw them through the neighbor's backyard.
Wow.
So you got raided probably because they heard how good your pastries are.
Well, no, they wanted to catch her.
That's why they come over there.
Yeah, they wanted to catch her because that was illegal. That was private enterprise.
They're there for the food.
They were there
but
for the food.
You know what? That's the reason why we invited you here, because we wanted people out there, our friends in Santa Clarita, to be inspired.
Story. Yeah.
To be inspired. I mean, behind the success of Porto's is a lovely story, and everybody loves a good story.
Yes.
Yes? And I know you've got 4 branches now?
Now we have, so we came in 1971. In 1971, we were able to finally get out. And so when we came in, my dad, of course, went about the business of getting a job, and he wanted her to work for somebody else, but she stuck to her guns. Because she said, I want to be self-employed. I don't want to work for anybody else, and I can prove to you that we can make a go out of it. So she went about the business of tweaking all her recipes, because the butter, the sugar, the milk was different in Cuba than it was here. Once she tweaked them and she had what she wanted, then she started making appointments at home for wedding cakes, quinceañeras, and word of mouth got around. The beginning was only the Cuban immigrants they knew of her. Pretty soon those Cuban immigrants had Filipino friends at work, or they had, other Latin American people, and they would start telling each other. Pretty soon the house was busting, and she didn't have enough room, we would come home to go to bed, and our beds were covered with sheets, and she would be flipping cakes as she was baking all night long.
That's a great problem, right?
So we slept on the sofa many times.
Well, we want to hear some more. Let's just listen to a few reminders. We'll be right back here at the Coffee Corner Radio. We're back at the Coffee Corner Radio, and the Coffee Corner Radio wishes to thank Abe Lagrimas Jr. for creating the catchy bumper music that you hear for the Coffee Corner Radio, as well as the use of his other musical properties for other promotional items. What you heard in the first segment is our dear guest, Betty Porto. What an inspiring story, and we'll hear more about the story of the empowered woman that was your mother. Now I know where you get that from. So talk to me about your mother and that whole struggle.
So basically, then she gets here, like, she has her, she convinces my dad. She worked out of the house for 5 years. That means that every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, she never stopped baking, because that's when people were coming in to get the cakes. She did it for 5 years and then ran out of room. I told her the beds were covered, we couldn't go to bed. She was driving one day on Sunset and Silver Lake, and saw what was the beginning of the little shopping malls that were springing up. And she told my dad, that's where I'm going to put the store. So again, it closed. It was in the corner of Silver Lake and Sunset. And then she went about the business of, getting the architects to get to draw the plans, the engineers, and then securing a loan, which was hard because she wanted $10,000. And every banker would tell her, oh, no, in order to get that kind of money, you need to have a house.
Or you need $20,000 in the bank.
You need collateral. We didn't have any. And she would tell him, if I had that kind of money, why would I be here? I would never come to you. Finally, she ran into somebody that knew. He was from our town. He knew of her work. He believed, because he was also a customer. And he took a chance, and he gave us the $10,000. And till this day, we still follow him. So whatever bank he goes to, we put money into that bank, because he was our first banker.
You do remember the people that helped you along the way, especially as you were starting off.
Of course.
Yeah.
They always talk about frequency.
Yeah.
Did he get a lifetime of pastries? Lifetime supply?
He's a customer, but what we do for him, which is better, whatever bank he opens.
Does he have a black card? Or just,
Well, you'd like to be that
He
fellow,
calls
right?
me all the time when he needs something. He doesn't wait in line. So after 5 years, we opened a place, 280 square feet, Sunset and Timber Lake. We were lucky enough that she had built a clientele, so she was able to pay the rent, which is always a challenge.
Yes.
90% of food business go out of business within 6 months. And it's because
yours?
they can't pay the rent.
When did
she
you
made
start?
money from the beginning.
Wow.
Because she had built a clientele. Remember, my mother was a business woman in Cuba. So not only was she talented with pastries, she also knew numbers.
I was going to ask, what kind of business was that? The office that she had to
Well, she
leave?
ran an office with 12 guys, and she was everything. She was like a CEO. So vacations, ordering, taking orders, payroll. She did everything. So she had a background with numbers, and we still have boxes of all her
Written?
kept records by hand. It looks like somebody printed them with a machine.
Wow.
She was super good with numbers. My sister's like that. I'm not. I don't like numbers. But, she was both good with it. She had a business mind.
Yes.
And you have to go back a little bit more. What made her, I always think as I get older, what made her the woman that came to this country.
Right.
And the one thing about my mother was her dad passed away when she was like 5 months old. So she was raised by my grandmother and a bunch of aunts. Now, these aunts came from northern Spain, but they had little businesses around the sugar mills. One had a shoe store, the other one made desserts and a winemaker. And my grandmother, when her husband passed away, sold her land because, the guys were stealing from her and opened a little market. And, so my mom was raised by her older sister because my grandmother was out there being in the business world.
Trying to make a living,
We're talking 1930s, 1940s Cuba.
Depression.
Okay, with no husband. And she was able to make it, raise 4 kids. My mother grew up in that kind of an environment with wonderful, recipes that were handed down from family to family. She also grew up surrounded by women that did this. And so my mother never questioned the fact that she could do it
She
because
trusted her instinct.
she saw it. It was done all around her. So it wasn't something that was never, oh, I can't do it because I'm a woman. No, her mother did it. Her mother was a businesswoman. So we ran. So it was just natural for her to do this. She never questioned it. She never thought, okay, I'm in a strange country, in a man's world. That never crossed her mind.
There was no glass ceiling for her.
She knew what she wanted to do. She trusted her talent. And so we opened our first place, and from day one, she was able to pay the rent. 1980, Glendale is being torn up. Brand Boulevard is in pieces. The mall is coming, so all the mom and pops are closing. There's no foot traffic, but there's a guy from Iran that owns a bakery there, and he has no foot traffic, so he's dying. So he sells us this fully equipped bakery for $30,000
Wow.
on Brand Boulevard on the main street in 1980, fully equipped. So we go from 280 to 2,000 something square feet. Again, we didn't need the foot traffic because my mother had now a clientele from Cuba, then the 5 years that she worked at the house, and then 76 to 80 working in Glendale. So the streets could be broken. The people were still going to come, so they would follow her wherever she went. So we were succeeded in a time in an area where everybody else was failing.
I hear to this day you don't believe in marketing because you don't have to.
Well, again, it's not that we don't believe in marketing. When you're an immigrant and you're trying to grow a business, and we grew up in the business as children, basically you're like an ostrich. Your head is buried in the ground. All you do is you work and you work and you work and you work. You don't take a breather. There were not vacation from my parents for maybe 20 years. So you're not thinking about all the stuff that's going around you. All you're doing is
just
working. Working.
Right, trying
Once
to put up.
Once the kids graduated, we all got university degrees because that was a must. Once we did that, everything changed for us.
Well, Betty.
And we went from being a mom and pop to what it is now, because now there were 3 children that were raised in this country with an education, and then we took it to the next level.
No, that's a great story.
Amazing.
Really.
She is unstoppable.
She is. And now Raul's taken over the future, I'm going to say, of Portos.
So there's 3 of us now.
You want to talk to our community here about where they can find you? The closest to Santa Clarita would be Burbank.
Well, I guess
right?
The closest,
takes me 20 minutes.
The
from
closest
Burbank
store
to get
would
there.
be Burbank. Then the next one would be Glendale, and of course Downey will be too far. And
Opening up in Covina.
And
Covina,
Buena Park.
We are opening 2 new locations. Buena Park 2016, right on beach, 2 blocks from Nussbury Farm. And then 2017, West Covina, across the mall, huge lot. So we're excited, and we'll see where we go with this. And who knows, in the future, Santa Clarita might be a place. Right now, we're too busy.
They're excited.
Yeah, I know.
And I know they're opening up a coffee shop next door, so that would be a great place to
By the way,
distribute
Thelms,
yes.
we wanted to thank Betty for bringing the pastries over for
Yes,
our
thank
craft
you,
services.
Betty.
Thank you.
I don't live home without
baked
it.
Fresh.
cheese rolls. We got to thank Peter here. We'll be right back after a few reminders here at the Coffee Corner Radio.